Hello and welcome to PowerSpeaking Live. I'm Carrie Beckstrom, your host of this monthly series and the CEO of PowerSpeaking Incorporated. Today, we're going to be discussing the benefits, the many, many benefits of working with a speech coach and how to get the most out of the experience. Now, I recognize as the leader of a company whose sole purpose is to help people find and use their voice to make a difference, that I come at this topic from a somewhat biased perspective. I believe very firmly, however, that one of the most meaningful things that you can do to elevate your impact and your confidence is to spend time working with a coach of this type. And there's all sorts of evidence to back this up. Regardless of your goals, working with a speech coach can help you to gain new skills and increase the likelihood that you'll be heard and respected wherever and whenever you speak. And it's important to note that when we talk about speaking, we're not just talking about public speaking. This applies anytime you speak, whether you're on a big stage at a conference, in a classroom, in a one-on-one conversation, in a meeting. There's relevance for all types of scenarios. And we have with us 3 expert panelists who are very anxious to delve into this topic. First, I'd like to introduce Nicole Weyer, who is joining us all the way from Amsterdam. Nicole is a technical solutions architect at Cisco. She's more commonly known, however, as the Chief Stroopwafel Officer of Cisco, also known as CSO. Now, if you want to know, and I am talking about the syrupy waffle treat. If you want to know more about what I'm talking about, I encourage you to check out Nicole's blog. We just dropped the link in chat. It is a brilliant story of how to create a personal and memorable brand. In addition to being a brand expert, Nicole is also an example of someone who has invested time and energy in working with a speech coach and has benefited immensely from that. Nicole is now a coveted speaker of not just one, but 3 Cisco Live events around the world, and I know is very, very anxious to delve into this topic. Thank you so much for joining us, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for having me on the panel today.
Terrific. Also joining us is Ralph Walter, joining us all the way from Germany. Ralph is one of PowerSpeaking's expert facilitators and coaches. Prior to joining PowerSpeaking, Ralph also worked at Cisco, where, among other things, he developed and co-led a talent management program for distinguished engineers in Europe. And among Ralph's many talents, he is very, very gifted at working with highly technical professionals and helping them to translate their message in a way that really resonates with their audience and inspires action. Welcome so much, Ralph.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here. And actually at Cisco Live, that's where Nicole and I met for the first time, and she can share more about the journey that started at that time.
Terrific. And lastly, we have Chris Brannon. Chris is joining right here from the San Francisco Bay Area. Chris, through her direct, no-nonsense approach, has helped countless professionals advance their careers. And among other things, she's especially gifted at working with high-level executives, helping them to uncover and recognize their blind spots and actually change their behavior, which is no small feat. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, everyone. Good to talk with you today.
So let's start off with you, Nicole. I would love if you would just share a little bit about how you have personally benefited from investing time and energy in working with a speech coach.
So, literally Ralph was my speech coach at the time. Because when you join within Cisco, you start presenting for the first time. They take it very serious. It's the next level of presenting. I did during high school and even college. We got our fair share of presentation skills and all those things. However, with a one-on-one coaching, you basically go to the next level. It's a very safe. I remember I felt very safe and not afraid to make mistakes. Actually, to be honest, while doing the coaching, it was never, let's say, mirrored as, "Oh, you did this wrong." No, it was nicely saying, "Look at this," because you will be videoed, and then you will look at the video, you will talk about it, and basically then you look at yourself, and then you basically come to the conclusion, say, "Oh, you know what? I should not do that." Balancing or on one feet, going back like this, back and forth. Stand still, stand your ground. Where are your hands, and all those things. So yes, and that helped me greatly. It makes me more relaxed, less stress. And every time if I get a chance, if they have a spot available, even this day I jump in and do it.
Terrific. That's terrific. I really like that you emphasize that it's a very safe environment to really grow, explore, recognize those blind spots, and get some really tailored coaching and encouragement to get even better. Naturally, this type of coaching can benefit anyone at any level. So I'd love if we could hear from our coaches on a few examples. Chris, we shared at the outset that you work extensively with executives. Can you talk a little bit about why this is a worthwhile investment for leaders at that level?
Yeah. Two things come to mind when you ask that. One, it's for the executives themselves. And more often than not, though, I'm doing the CEO, for instance, and his leader or her leadership team. And what comes out of that is I'm often asked, tell me which one of my leaders are ready to represent the company externally to external stakeholders. And so that combination really works very, very well. And what do they need to work on to be more ready or more impactful? And then with the leader himself or herself, what often comes to mind is we work on key messaging externally and internally. So really crafting that, realizing the value of that. And then it's different for everyone. I remember one leader never used transitions, and suddenly they became so much clearer in their messaging. And it's just simple transitions. So let's go to the first point. Let's go to the second point to wrap up. And that's really all this person needed. They were very clear, very concise, and pretty good at messaging. And then another one was I was watching at All Hands, and this leader did not know where the camera was. So the eyes were everywhere and never connected to the camera, and had no idea that that's what they needed to do. So sometimes no one tells them, or somebody needs to tell them. And then one more thing comes to mind. They often ask the question, how's my tone? Do I sound arrogant? Do I sound too humble? How do I get that right level? And we work on tone and delivery. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Great. Those are all such powerful examples. And I like, Chris, how you described, you're not only benefiting the executives at an individual level, but also at a team level to improve the effectiveness of the team as a whole. Ralph, you work with technical people all the time. Give us some examples of how and why technical professionals benefit from this type of coaching.
Well, I've experienced the challenges myself, and one of those I call the expert's dilemma. And we've all seen that with engineers, that we are so excited about our technology, solution, architecture, whatever else it may be. And so when being asked to share a little bit, we usually go into way too many details, thinking that the more we share, the better the audience will understand it. often in coachings, trainings, workshop sessions, I turn this around and then I ask the engineers, is it really when you sit in the audience that you understand more by being bombarded with details? And they usually say no, but we still do it, right? And so finding a way out of that dilemma is certainly one. And once people realize it and start with more of a summary or sometimes an executive summary, the eye opener is, wow, everyone benefits from it. It's not just the executives, it's any audience benefits if we start with a big picture overview, then go into details, and then depending on the audience, go further. And the other part is that many engineers have a tendency to present with this level of excitement. I still remember my first boss at Cisco approaching me after what I thought was a successful customer presentation, and he said, Ralph, can you present with a bit more excitement and energy? And my response at that time was, if this technology doesn't convince the audience, who can help them? Well, I realized I needed some help, right? And so working on these things actually has a big impact. And once individuals realize it, just like Nicole described it, seeing themselves, seeing is believing.
Wonderful. Thank you for modeling that monotone, extra dull delivery so perfectly. All right.
Harry,
Yeah.
to follow up a little bit on that, that's so true, right? If you play it on a monotone, I mean, I see some colleagues, they stick to the same level, or, when they have accompanying visualizations, they put everything on that slide. I mean, one of the first things I learned from Ralph was like, there's too much. So it's every time now I look at slides, I go, less is more. I rather use visualizations. And then they say, can I have the slides? Of course you can, but you really need to listen to my story. Otherwise, you will not make any sense.
Right. So well said. They're there to punctuate and emphasize key points, not to verbatim tell the story. Yeah, that's wonderful. So let's segue to talking about how one can get the most out of this type of experience, both leading up to it, during it, and afterwards. So, Chris, would you share a little bit about, coaching sessions are typically 1-2 hours. How do you prepare for that to ensure, as a coachee, to make sure you truly get the most out of the experience?
Two things come to mind. One is say it out loud before you come to coaching. And we say that often. But once people get it, you want to get it out loud. I talk to my curtains all the time. I mean, I have to talk to this curtain. This curtain gets an earful of key things that I want to kind of get into my muscle memory. So we always emphasize speak out loud. And the magic number is 5. I don't know why it's a magic number, but it just is. The first time you do it, it's like real chunky. The second time it gets worse because you're overthinking everything. The third time it gets better. The fourth time it gets better. The fifth time, it's there. Your brain is free to do all the other things you have to do, such as the camera, such as reading the audience. So that's number one. Say it out loud a few times before you come to coaching, and then we can really do a lot. But a lot of people don't do that. So then what we do is say it out loud again, like a 2-minute version. And they get that point, how valuable it is. And the written word and the spoken word, so different. So that is a key point that people get that they can continue to do. Not everything, but the key messages or the key explanation part. Say it out loud 5 times, let it be yours, and that frees your mind up. The second thing is in the coaching session, and people are usually very open because it's one-on-one, and they say all sorts of things of, I get nervous or I get this or, but I like to start out with an inventory because I think, what do you do well? What do you know you do well? What are your solid strengths? What do people tell you, in your career? What feedback have you got that you believe? So we do that. These are your solids. And then I think the coach's job is to confirm that. Yeah. And then add to that. Oh, by the way, you have a really good voice or whatever it might be. And then all right, what do you think you need to work on, either during the class or you've been thinking, or somebody told you and you agree with them. And sometimes I say, no, you don't have that problem. We take it off and put it on the strength side. But then I get a full picture, and so do they. And then with that, we identify their style. Your style is this, and there's not one style. There's everything from energetic bunny to slow, thoughtful, calm presenter. So, and everything in between. So I think that inventory is a really important thing for the coachee to understand, and then to understand their natural style and then augment it.
Terrific. Wow. There was a lot in there, Chris. And you, many of the things that you said really underscored the magic of the one-on-one coaching and how that's different than any other kind of learning experience. One is the way in which you're able to really personalize it to that individual's strengths and where they have opportunity for improvement. And I also really appreciate that you help people to identify their unique style, because this isn't a one size fits all. And that's part of what is the journey in enhancing one's effectiveness, is really, really dialing into what is my unique style and how do I convey that in an authentic, very compelling way. That's great. I love it. Ralph, anything you want to add?
Yeah. One thing that came to mind while Chris was talking is, in particular, when working with techies, I invite them into a lab session. So the coaching is kind of a lab session, right? In a lab session, you experiment. You cannot fail because it's a safe environment. And usually, and people get that, you learn most in a lab if things go wrong. If everything goes according to plan, that's fine. I proved that everything is fine, and I can read manuals and type it into it. That wasn't the idea. So experimenting, trying out new things, seeing what works well to keep that, and modifying what does not go well, and take one thing at a time. Same as if what you would do in a lab. You wouldn't change 5 parameters, be surprised that it works, but you have no clue why. So one thing at a time, and then keep practicing that, and then take the next one. So I see a lot of similarities there, and so do people when they start working with us. And I think that's a good analogy to use.
Yeah, I really like that in terms of really emphasizing that this is an experiment. And the point about taking one thing at a time, just like learning how to golf, you're never going to succeed if you don't take it one thing at a time. At PowerSpeaking, we also like to refer to the coaching environment as the transformation chamber. How inspirational is that? Nicole, what would you add with regard to getting the most out of the experience in the moment?
I'm just, that I just entered the cocoon right now, as you said, when you just said that room. No, so, exactly. One of the things when Ralph was telling, things that experimenting, one of the things for me, I'm 100% extrovert. So silence, for instance, for me is like killing. 2 seconds silence feels like an hour. And yet, people need to digest. Specifically, when I actually present, I present at a quite high speed when I get really excited. And so people need to digest. And that's also, even, looking at the camera, but looking at the people eyes, because then you can also read a lot. And then take that pause. And it's okay to pause. And it's fine. Everybody will not say, what the heck, unless you're for a solid 5 minutes quiet, then they probably go like, are you okay? But but that actually I remember training that, doing that in the training with Ralph, and then the first time I was like, okay, and it felt so scared. And then when we looked it back on the video, and it's like, hold on, this is actually not so bad. But it felt forever.
Yeah, that's great. So the power of the pause was one of the gifts that you got out of that coaching. I see we have a question from an audience member. This is from Lonnie. In your coaching experience, do you have a recommended frequency for ongoing coaching sessions beyond the initial session or preparation for a significant presentation? Who would like to take that?
was about to say, I have an idea. I would say as what do you feel comfortable with? So it was sort of mandatory, which was perfectly fine. But then, so every year when I just get the chance, for me, it was also to get the focus. Because procrastination, excuse me for it's a very difficult word, but I tend to leave everything to the last second and then I freak out. But then the one-on-one sessions, I just basically get into focus. So that's how I feel comfortable. Some people would say, one and that's enough, and they can go on with their life and they practice it, let's say, not only while presenting, but also on a daily life with their colleagues. And others, every year, if they get, literally, I would, if I get the chance every time I see them, I would definitely do it.
Great. Yeah, yes, Chris, I would just want to say one thing. I'd love to hear your perspective. I talked about this at the beginning. This is talking about behavior change. That's what we're in the business of doing, is helping people to change their behavior, elevate their skills. And it's highly unlikely that you're going to get there in just one coaching session. So, Chris, what are your thoughts?
Of course, it depends. But if an executive or anyone is preparing for a critical presentation, then I recommend 2 hours, and then post debriefing as a minimum. I think that works very well. I just did this in the last 2 weeks. And you can do a lot in 2 hours. And you can really move and solidify your strengths. But there's a person I've been coaching in Hong Kong for 4 years now. So it's every presentation, he really wants to get through it and talk it out and get the core message. And he tends to be too detailed. He wants to, elevate or have a more high-level main message. And it's really fun to do. We meet once a month. So it really depends. But if you had the minimum would be 2, present, and let's debrief as often as somebody wants to do it.
Right.
Interesting. When hearing that, I thought, well, 2 hours is quite a bit, 2 hours in a row. So my approach would rather be to have an hour and then see, can the coachee, the person who wants to get to the next level, practice? And then ideally get a recording, because what often happens is in the coaching conversation, even though we can do role plays and I can put a bit of stress on them, never as much as in a real situation. So work on skills, practice in the safe coaching environment, then practice and deliver in front of a real audience, come back, let's watch the recordings, identify a few more things, and then take an iteration. And then the better they get. Don't do it that frequently, but keep working until someone really reaches the level that they want to be at. And then, as Nicole said, from time to time, just double check what behaviors. We all adopt strange behaviors and we don't see them ourselves. We need someone to actually point it out.
Absolutely. And these varied responses just underscore the fact that this is not a one-size-fits-all. This is a very, very individualized, situational type process that the needs and the goals of the individual kind of dictate what that frequency and timing is going to be. So Lonnie, thank you for that. Audience, any question that you have, you don't have the opportunity to have 3 experts like this at your disposal. So I encourage you to add any questions that you have in chat and we'll take them as we go. So just final question on this topic. What about post-coaching session? What recommendations do you have for your coachees on how to ensure what they've learned in that session, the insights that they gained, actually stick and help to make a difference?
Can I go?
Please. Didn't I mention she has a no-nonsense direct approach? Go for it, Chris.
I always say 10 minutes every week. Everybody can do that. And something like 10 minutes every week. And then I kind of give them, is it a 3-month assignment, a 4-month thing to keep on their radar, or sometimes 6 months. And it's kind of a contract. And what do they do in those 10 minutes? You have to do 10 minutes every week. So Friday comes, you're too tired. You still have to do 10 minutes. So maybe you just watch a TED Talk. And if pause is what you're working on, as Nicole was saying, then you just look for pause. And not all TED Talks have pauses. So then that's a negative reinforcement. Boy, that person didn't pause. Or, oh, this person is pausing. Oh, that's interesting. So 10 minutes. And then when you have more energy, record yourself and then look at it for a couple of minutes and say, oh, I think I've calibrated a pause, or I thought it was a pause, but boy, there was no pausing. So 10 minutes every week is really what I think works very, very well. I'm sure there are other ways to go, but that's what I say.
Wonderful.
In my coaching, I always ask 2 questions at the end. The first one is what was most important, and the second is what is your next step. And no one leaves without those. And then they have something concrete, and they can act on that. And then at the next meeting, we'll discuss how did that go. And if nothing happened, we have a next coaching topic. But usually things do happen.
You're helping me to think about another benefit of investing in this type of session is it builds in accountability. So Nicole, for instance, you mentioned that you tend to be a procrastinator. I can completely relate and leave things to the last minute. Well, if you have that coaching session that you need to go to, that forces that accountability to focus, as you said, and really put the time to prepare.
I like it when you said that last minute. I mean, I even leave it to the last second. I up it for you.
All right. I wouldn't recommend that everybody in the audience take Nicole's advice. Again, this is a very individual thing. It has to suit your comfort level. Ralph, I spoke over you.
No, sorry. It was just, this is a very emotional topic because I've seen it with many clients, and I've never seen a single person in all of these years who came unprepared twice. It may happen once, but then next time they know what to expect, because I would finish the coaching conversation before it even has started, and they learn that quickly in their own best interest.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. We have a question from Gemma Holmes that I want to get to, and before we answer this, Gemma, it's a perfect segue to our next conversation that we want to have. In anticipation of this event, I surveyed all of our facilitators, all of whom have extensive experience as speech coaches, and asked them, what are some of the number one questions and needs that surface during the coaching sessions? And the top 3 were how to deal with nerves. So I love that you asked that, Gemma. Second was how to be more concise. Third was how to respond effectively to challenging questions in the moment. So we're going to unpack each of those. And for Gemma, let's start with nerves. Who's handling that one?
Me. Yeah.
Okay, go, Nicole.
Chris is from San Francisco. She was, I would almost say she was really Dutch, and had Dutch directness. So literally, I remember, excuse me, but the lady coach, sorry, Ralph, you need to help me with her name.
Sarah,
thank you so much, Sarah. And let me move a little bit backwards, because how to handle nerves and also shaky voice will help with that as well. Stand up, you make yourself as big as possible. And this is what I now tend to do if I present at Cisco Live. I go to the bathroom just to take a last break. And I'm standing in front of the mirror and make myself so big, because also then your diaphragm, expands. And so then the shaky voice will also lose. And you make, I'm the best, I'm the biggest, I'm the top of the world. And then you breathe out, and then you go into your on stage.
I love it. For those of you who just have the benefit of audio, just visualize Nicole standing up, stretching out her arms as wide as they can go, and striking that power pose, which helps to increase that confidence and open up your diaphragm. Wonderful. What would you add, Chris?
Unless it's really huge nerves, which is a different conversation that is debilitating, the kind of normal nerves that happen for actors, for singers, and for presenters is a good thing. It means you care. And if you don't believe me, I got to tell the Adele story. Adele, singer, very good singer, doing absolutely fine. What people don't know about Adele is that she throws up almost every time before she goes on stage. That's how nervous Adele gets. So the moral of this story is it has nothing to do with how good you are. It has to do with how much you care. So all you have to do is, we don't have to throw up like Adele. She throws up, special bucket, breathalyzed, on stage, and she's doing absolutely fine. So a good singer, a good presenter, a good actor, whatever, would simply say, good. Butterflies flying in my stomach. Welcome. Okay. Throw up, not throw up, and then focus on something else, because you don't want to keep talking to the butterflies. You just want to say, okay, I'm talking to you, I'm singing to you, and you focus on your audience and your content. That's it.
Wonderful. Ralph wants to add something.
Quick glance behind the scene. As panelists, we joined the session 15 minutes early, of course, to avoid any last-minute surprises, and we were chatting and having fun. And the last 3 minutes before it started, you could all feel it. And we all had it. We all have it. Everyone has it. And it shouldn't disappear, because you end up as a boring presenter. But you learn to make friends with it, you learn to accept it and to use it, because adrenaline keeps us focused and on our toes. The only thing we should avoid is operating windmills in front of the audience and all of those things. And there are techniques to fix that.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. We could go on and on on this topic. We actually have a whole blog devoted to it. If our producer can find that and put a link in chat, that would be wonderful. And I see John has a really great question. I want to get to yours in just a minute, John. I want to first respond to the other top 3 challenges that come up so frequently from our clients. The second one is learning how to be more concise. Let's see. Ralph, how about you take that?
Practice it. Ask yourself, if I would only have one slide, and that shouldn't be a dense slide, try to collapse the whole message you have into one short slide. Or write it down. Ask yourself what's most important for the audience. If I could only have these 3 bullet points, what would it be? And then test it with the audience. Find a colleague or someone and just give that short version and see if the most important things are in there. Record yourself. Check it out, listen to yourself and see, is it in there? Is it that short? And then I have a nice toolkit that I often introduce to people, a Post-it note. Write one positive word on it, or maximum 2, like short or concise or to the point, and literally take it and stick it under your webcam before the session starts. And when you look at it and it says concise or short, remember it must be positive. It'll remind you. So it's not afterwards that you realize, oh, done this wrong again. But practice.
Terrific. Lots of advice there. Chris?
I think conciseness is, we never graduate from working on it until we retire. And then we should continue anyway. Conciseness, we never get it perfect either. A lot of people I coach are too concise. They need to be a little bit more in their answer. And then, of course, the opposite is much more frequent, where too lengthy, as Ralph was saying, too much detail. But I think fundamentally, I end up thinking and saying it's a mindset issue. I think people need to go from the mindset of more is better, and I'm smart and I need to tell you, to less is more. And that, when you make that transition, then you start working on being concise, and you just keep working on it. And then when you don't know, you read the room. You say, am I not giving you what you want? Heck no, talk more about that. Or, no, I got it, move on. So let the room, let your audience calibrate you. And it's okay, you're zooming out, you're zooming in, and you just have to keep reading the room.
Excellent. I want to call out something you said, Chris. You talked about a mindset shift, and that's another awareness that occurs during these one-on-one coaching sessions is learning how you have to shift your mindset and your viewpoint on something. In this case, really truly believing that less is more. The other thing, and then of course you get into all kinds of techniques and strategies for effectively doing that. And then Ralph, of course, practice, practice, practice. The other thing I would mention, and this is an integral component of all of the workshops and coaching that we do, is the power of frameworks. Having a structure that can help you to really structure your thinking, your messages, and relay it in a way that your audience can really follow and understand. Thank you so much, Andrew, our producer. He's put not one, but two links, two different blogs that we've done on techniques and strategies for effectively managing those nerves. Additionally, for those of you who would like to learn more about how best to be a more concise, effective communicator, excellent book I would recommend called Smart Brevity. All right. The last one that so frequently comes up that we want to provide some sage advice on is how to effectively deal with those challenging questions, sometimes objections in the moment. Nicole, how about if you kick us off?
Oh my God. So there's never a dull moment in my session. So I would just run away. No, I don't. Or I throw a stroopwafel at them and then they are so busy eating it anyway. So then any answer will be fine. No, I'm just joking. But it does actually ease the, let's say, the room. If a question comes, the first thing I always do is I repeat the question. Sometimes I even, change it, but more in my life, in my style that I'm thinking, am I thinking already in what you're thinking? So I'm also confirming, saying, so what are you saying? You're asking me how to handle difficult questions. So this is literally what I'm doing now, as you just asked me, Carrie. And then of course I'm looking at the person or either on video or in the room. And then, of course, I see them nodding or I see them looking very difficult. And then my next question would be, so apparently I didn't get it right. Can you elaborate a little bit more? And so they will continue a little bit. So that gives me, again, more time to, let's say, find a good answer, because it could be that the person is upset about something and he or she really wants to get the voice heard. So sometimes not even giving an answer or just by listening is already enough. But acknowledge the person, making sure that, yes, you understand, you give an answer. And then by the end, even saying, did I answer the question? Because if it's not, of course, you need to give it either more time or saying, you know what, I would really let me give you more time. Can you please wait after the session and I'll sit with you and continue on this, because I think it's really important. And then that's acknowledging even the person, yes, I'm taking it very serious, but then of course the scariness comes.
Yeah. And one of the things you're talking about is getting to the question behind the question. Ralph, I saw you had something you wanted to add.
What I learned over the years is to differentiate between what sounds like a challenging question, but is not really challenging, is more direct, potentially because of culture. Germany comes to mind with very direct questions, and a really challenging question. And the first one is more, just take it like any other question. As Nicole said, paraphrasing always helps to get some clarity there. And then you often realize people are so eager to learn more that they forgot to sugarcoat the question. If it's a really challenging one, I would judge in the moment to see, does it fit here? Does it make sense? Or is that person trying to take over? And then find a nice way to either postpone it to afterwards, to focus on someone else. Do it in a nice and gentle way. Don't start a confrontation. Make sure you're, as the speaker, are the leader. And based on my experience, it helps, because the second category is so rare. The first one happens way more often.
Very true. Chris?
It's what everyone's saying, but here's an actual example. I call it the technique of take the blow. Take the blow. If it's one of those tough ones. And it happened to me. So I was presenting up and I was asking for head count. And I got this question. So, Chris, if you just managed your people better, you wouldn't need extra head count, right? And, of course, I'm dying inside and I'm thinking, whoa, and all sorts of things are going off in my brain. But take the blow is what I learned. And it's what, Nicole, you were saying, paraphrase, because you want to really answer that question and you want to assume good intent. And even if it's not good intent, you still assume good intent. And so this is what I said. I can't believe I said it, but I said it. So let me see if I understand. You think it's a managerial issue, and if I manage my people better, I would not need these extra 2 head count. Did I get that right? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And if I'm going to contradict someone, I would definitely take the blow by paraphrasing. And then I said, it is not a managerial issue. It is a skill-based issue. And we do not have those skills on my team. And if we don't have those skills in my team, we will not meet the deadline. But I acknowledge the blow. Is this what you're saying? And so they don't tend to continue to talk about how bad of a manager I am.
Yeah, that's a great example. I have to know, did you get the head count?
Yeah.
I love it. Great story. I want to get to John's question. John was asking for people who are presenting virtually, what tips do you have to build their ready? What is this, John?
Readability.
Who would like to take that?
Oh, let me start. Virtually is a whole new. It's different. Let's put it because you don't know right now. I'm looking into a camera, and of course that's also a skill you need to learn because it's easier to look down and to look like at everybody's faces, and waving to the people in the Netherlands at home right now that are on camera. But but it makes it easier. It's like I need to look in the camera because then it feels that I'm talking to you. That's the virtually that's difficult, even because when you're presenting and you're using slides because you really want to look down. So it is tips indeed. Look once in a while into your camera. So record yourself. Look to see. I know that but if I look in the camera a little bit, unfortunately you see my screen reflecting. That's the downside, by the way, of having glasses. So that's almost inevitable. But make sure looking in the audience in the eyes. Also make sure know what's behind you. That I did this on purpose. Welcome to my home because I like to be comfortable, and people are allowed to see my home. And even do a dry run. So is your camera good? Is your microphone good?
Excellent. And thank you so much, John. What John was getting at is in a virtual environment, how do you come off credible? Looks like you have something you'd like to add, Ralph.
Yes. For the techies, get great technology. Black Friday is coming soon, right? So if you don't have a great webcam, if your audio isn't good, buy all of these things because you're saving so much from not traveling. Make sure that your equipment really works. Make sure you have a plan B. If one device fails, have a second one. If your network fails, make sure you have an alternative. All of those things can be so distracting. And if they don't distract, people can focus on you so much better.
Excellent. Really excellent point. So make sure that technology is good and look into that camera. Wonderful. Okay. On the subject of virtual, What's your perspective, our coaches here? Do you think you can provide these services as effectively virtually as you can in person?
Oh, I have a story.
Okay, go for it.
I actually refused to do virtual teaching before the pandemic. And then I went to Carrie and I said, do I really have to do virtual? And Carrie said to me, Chris, that's what's going to happen. And Carrie convinced me that I should do it. And I was very skeptical because I thought, you cannot teach these skills virtually. So I was taking all the in-person ones and letting everybody else do the virtual. And I am a convert now. I find that the virtual because is more intimate sometimes than the face-to-face. I mean, if I see Ralph or if I see Nicole up front, for an hour, I mean, I feel like we really get to know each other. It's really a strange phenomenon, but my answer is yes. Absolutely, we can do this virtually.
And that speaks volumes, Chris, given how resistant you were at one time, understandably. Ralph, I see you nodding. What do you have to add?
I had this experience this week where I was working with a client and we had a coaching session and we talked a bit about virtual. And I thought, well, let's go for an experiment. So I said, can we just try this out? So on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 would mean we have no connection and 10 would mean we're best buddies for the last 10 years. How would you rate our rapport after 20 minutes in the coaching conversation? And he said 7, which I thought I would have rated it the same. And now think about it, 20 minutes in the virtual world, only seeing each other via video, but having really an in-depth conversation. How much higher would we be in person? Maybe on an 8, but maybe not. Because what I've often seen is, in particular, introverted people, it's easy for them to open up virtually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's all kinds of research that's been done on how introverts, and I don't mean, I'm broad brushing here, but in general, introverts have flourished in this virtual environment because it's often much easier for them to engage and contribute in meetings because you have multiple means of doing that. And that absolutely translates to the coaching experience as well. I would love to end on a really inspiring note and have each of you share one of the most transformative experiences you've had in a coaching session. And let's start first with our coaches. And then, Nicole, I'd love to conclude with you from a coaching perspective. So who's kicking us off? Chris, how about you?
Okay. I thought about this question because 30 years of coaching, and I thought, what was the most transformative? So I finally landed on one. I was coaching pre-pandemic, and it was a class and coaching combined. And there was one woman in the coaching session, and she had a very high voice. I mean, it was super high. It was in the high head voice. And I'm cautious about the voice because people get very defensive if you point it out. But I thought I got to bring it up for her. And I said, your voice. And she said, yes, I know. Help me. What can you do? And I said, oh, okay. And we talked about where she's placing it. I'm a voice major. You have to forgive me for the geekiness of the voice thing. But you're placing it in your head voice. Do you know where your chest voice is? I mean, we really worked on it. And she could not get it out of her head. And it was way high. And she kept saying, everybody thinks she's, a child when she answers the phone. And it turned out she has a PhD. She's a scientist in a huge pharma. And she has an MBA. And I said, what? Okay. And we didn't get to the root cause. So I said to her, you have until 5 o'clock to figure out why your voice is so high. And then I went on with the class, and she said, at 5 o'clock, she came up to me and said, Chris, can we talk? And I said, sure. She said, I figured it out. After I got my PhD and my MBA, and she was Taiwanese, she went back to Taiwan. and her father did not like the way she was speaking. He said, "You are talking to your mother and I as if you are our teachers, and you are not our teachers." And so she put her voice up an octave, and they liked it very much. These are her words. And as soon as she said that, I said, "Okay, can you put it down here?" And she did.
Chills.
Huge. I mean, a lot of coaching with voice is transformative, is the name. Yeah.
Mhm. Oh my goodness. And I'm certain she'll remember that experience to this day. Thank you for sharing that, Chris. How about you, Ralph?
Well, there's a reason why I invited Nicole. So I'm not sharing any transformational stories from clients. I'd rather share my own story, because I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be sitting here without John Warren from PowerSpeaking, who I started working with when I was still at Cisco. We have we could spend hours and days to share all of the stories, but I wouldn't be here without him. So a big thanks, John, to you. And I think it's a good example of how we can all pass it on.
Wonderful. Nicole.
Ralph, I was so waiting for you for my transformational story about me. You're gonna tell me.
Oh, you can share it yourself now.
well, there are some. I'll be honest. Every coaching session I did, so with you and with Sarah, have been transformational. So because there's always something, because I always want to get the better out of myself. I still remember. I'll share two stories because I can, and because I'm Dutch and I'm the last, and it's on more reasons. One, so with Ralph, for instance, it was that there's always something to learn. When I came into the room, the first thing he said, "Why are you here?" I was like, well, there's more to learn because I already at least one
Distinguished speaker, right? You were
exactly. I already got a distinguished speaker, which is the top 10% of the conference. So it's a high achievable and it's like amazing to get it. But once you get the first one, it's actually the bar is high for the next one onwards, because that it's like you want more candy. It's like this sugar rush. You're like, oh. But as shared already, procrastination is in my DNA. So I just leave things to the last second, which nowadays I sometimes don't, but sometimes I still fall back in my pitfalls. And this is also when I had my one-on-one with Sarah. And she said, "Why are you here?" I said, "Well, I think I haven't prepared." and literally, and then of course I had my stuff. So at least I could give her something. But that's, I told her, I said, "You are my preparation," as in to focus. And literally after that 1 hour, it's like, yes, I'm focused, got great scores again. And that helped as well. So this is for me always also that focus moment, like, okay, because my extrovertness squirrels are in my life. I mean, oh my God, it's never a dull moment.
Oh, so for you, one of the values in transformation of a coach is having that accountability partner to really, really dial in that focus. Nicole, Chris, Ralph, thank you so very much. Thank you to our audience. Really appreciated the questions and the engagement. And do check out chat if you haven't already. We have all kinds of resources that we've added there. Thank you, Andrew. In closing, we are currently working on our editorial calendar for next year. So if there are any topics that you would like for us to cover in upcoming PowerSpeaking Live events, please add that in chat or send me an email or reach out to me on LinkedIn. We'd love your feedback. Thank you so very much.